Good evening, sir. Thanks,
Evening,
thanks for giving
evening.
us your time. I know you've been with us from the start of the day, and you haven't left. You sat through all of these sessions. So maybe a few words of just what the day's been like for you, and a few words for everybody here.
No, first of all, Vishesh, I found the day extremely inspiring. And first of all, thank you all. Thank you all. Many congratulations to founders, supporters, investors, and people on the fence wanting to invest. But you have done India and the world proud. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Speciale Invest. You have a wonderful team. You've put this together, and I'm sure that your stars will continue to rise, as also that of your founders. So, well done, Speciale Invest.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I have a few questions that I sort of pulled in from people that I interacted with, and I'm going to ask sir that. And if any of you have questions, please raise your hands. We've got 3 or 4 hand mics. We'd be most happy to have you go first before we do. But I'll possibly start with the first one. So, the group has been in existence now for 5 generations, and clearly independence and from there on. And that vantage point possibly gives a very different view to how the world, and more importantly, the Indian economy changed, evolved. Any observations, reflections that you have that you think you want to share with us today?
First of all, is Mr. Lax Narayanan here?
Lux in the house?
He disappeared.
He's outside. He's possibly taking a break.
I thought he could get ChatGPT to talk. That's what I thought that you could do. And
Lux in the house.
Mr. Narayan, I thought before I start talking, you could get ChatGPT to talk about this. But Vishesh, just to tell you, thank you for that compliment. I know see, a lot of the founders here are presumably first generation. So you are really the innovators, etc. I'm actually a fellow who inherited business, but nevertheless, talking about 5 generations as to how businesses have evolved and how they have transformed, how they transitioned, is actually quite interesting. And just to let you know that we started with very humble beginnings. If you don't mind, I'm just going to grab a glass of water.
Let me get it for you.
Huh? It's okay. It's okay. Got this umbilical cord somewhere, yes? So, we as a business, started with very humble beginnings. And when I see some of your founders, and you too have done, hats off to all of you. My great-grandfather, he was the last of 9 children. So the poor fellow didn't get anything much from his father. So he was packed off to Burma as an office boy. And but he did something different, and I think this is what all of you are doing also in terms of your own innovation, disruption, etc. He did something different, and he went to work for somebody else. But he did something different in as much that he learned the Burmese language, which the other Indian people did not do. So obviously, his boss's business got a lot more traction than the others. So they didn't want to let him go. So they gave him an ESOP. Okay, now you have ESOP as a practice with all the big 4 and all the nonsense, but they gave him an ESOP. They made him a partner in their business, but they moved him to another region of Burma. And then business flourished, business developed, but At the same time, he too grew, and he was quite an active character. He himself has 7 children. And and then he decided to buy his owner or senior partners out, and he set out on his own. So it was very interesting because the disruption at that time perhaps was to do something different in terms of learning the language, getting involved with the local ethos in Myanmar. I don't know him, I've not met him, but I've heard my grandparents talking about him. And he had 7 children, he had 3 boys, and his time it was more pioneering. That was first generation. But he did something which was very interesting. And he had 3 sons. I mean, 2 were much older, and the one was much younger. And he wanted to be back in India because that's where his roots were. But he never had any business here. He did 2 things. When he made some money, he actually built a hospital in our village because he felt that he needed to share with people. And that hospital next year in January 24 will be 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's still run. My wife, some of you know, she still oversees it. We see 240 patients per day. We don't charge. We charge a rupee for registration. But so he was quite grounded. But his 2 sons, he sent my grandfather off to Singapore and Malaysia to see whether he can drum up some business. So he was quite venturing as well. And he had my grandfather's brother in Burma. And but one thing he did different than many Indian families, he got the spouses and the children to go along with them because he did not have any education. Not to the extent that all of you have, but he didn't have any education. But he had that vision that you need to integrate with the world. You came here for business to Myanmar or Burma at that time, but you had to integrate with the world. And therefore, some of my uncles, all of them, they schooled in St. Joseph's and Rangoon. Some of my aunts went to school in Singapore. My grandmother would tell me that she used to look forward to coming back to India because the mosquitoes in Singapore were so big. It was a swamp at that time. But nevertheless, so the next generation, and I'm giving you this context because businesses and families evolve over generations. And the next generation ensured that they sort of developed and built businesses, and simultaneously as they developed and built businesses, they also set aside a small amount of money for social good, in whatever form. It started off with the hospital, and then it went on to schools and various things over generations. But the important thing is, like in anyone's family, like even in your families, I'm sure, there's always a defining moment in the family. If you look back, there's a defining moment where parents really worked hard. They never told you, but they worked hard to put you through university or put you through schools, where they had high hopes and aspirations for you. I'm sure there were situations where things were difficult monetarily, but you really worked hard to come out of it. But in our family, the defining moment was tragedy. So my grandfather's brother, who was in Burma, he was killed. So when he was killed, they lost a lot of confidence in Burma, and it was the time also the revolutionary government was slowly taking charge. India's independence was imminent. So therefore, whatever little they could take out of Burma, they just took out that money, came to India, and started afresh. But they had good relationships. They built good networks. And they built networks with people who were in the government of India or the Indian side of the British government of India. And when India became independent, and the context at that time was India became independent, India needed to be self-reliant in many core sectors. And the people that they knew and they worked with also had their links with different parts of the world. And they started off with joint ventures with British companies. And that gave them another perspective. You came into a developing country which is independent now, wanting to fend for itself, and then you had this opportunity of a joint venture. So the generation following them, because even they did not have too much education, the generation following them, they made sure that they were all educated. And using the linkages they had with these British companies, they sent them overseas to study, train, and they also sent them along with their spouses because they were a little worried these guys would run away with something. But nevertheless, just look at that. We have to be one with the world. And it's not just today with all the technology and everything we have, just that far-sighted thought process. So generation 3 were largely people who developed business, and then it came to generation 4, people like myself who may be by that time born in a lap of luxury, but never given much luxury at all because we were packed away to military school, were packed away to boarding school, where education was at the end of a stick. And so you were one with everybody. You were just told and to learn to be just like anyone else. So by the end, education was further emphasized. They gave us opportunities to study, learn, grow, see the world. And as we came into business, it was also a transition from an economy that was regulated a lot. It's still regulated quite a bit, but regulated a lot. But that transition that took place in a more open economy. And that's where we are. And then how it evolved is as businesses grew, as the group grew, and many of our overseas partners left India. Now they want to come back, but they left India, and India did not have a capital market. So when they left India, the government of India said, you cannot buy them out, even if you have the money, you have to put it out into the public. So it started a capital market in India. And you have some very smart young people here like Mr. Parekh who took advantage of that capital market. But now he is wanting to be an LP investor, hopefully in Speciale Invest. Yeah. And so the capital market evolved. Okay. I cannot say my family took credit for it. We all had to do it because Mr. Nehru decided or Mrs. Gandhi decided. So that's the way that it went. But as businesses grew, you needed to give some structure to it. You needed to ensure that these businesses were well managed. The businesses had good governance. So therefore, the importance of boards of directors, the importance of the kind of capabilities that you had amongst the board, and a structure to it, and what is so-called in very loose parlance today, professionalization. And professionalization is totally misunderstood. It's a very convenient classification. It's a convenient classification between some guy who has a lot of shares in the business and some guy who does not. It's a very convenient classification. So, and it also brought a semblance of, performance, even whether it was family or non-family. You were subject to performance, you were subject to evaluation, you were subject to people evaluating you outside of your family. And if you didn't make it, you were suitably given a small business and a title and everything like that. But if you made it, they really hounded you for levels of performance, like many VCs hound you guys. So, but they also set up a retirement age. So my small investment in Special was also in the hope that now when I'm retired, that you will give me some opportunity to interact with some of your investee companies, which I find very interesting. And also, apart from protecting the small investment I made, I've got to protect Surmi and her brother's investments as well, as they grew up at our home. So that's where I am over generations. God's been good to us. God's been kind. And as businesses grew, families grew, the biggest challenge I have today is to come to terms with my grandson. And it's another story, except that my family has told him that I have locked the fridge because the chocolates are inside. And we still haven't got to that. But nevertheless, over generations, what has happened is that while defining moments have been often tragic, there's been an opportunity to grow and develop businesses within India and overseas when there are opportunities like that. And the context is that India is open to the world, and India cannot do business without taking into account what the world needs. And it's very, very gratifying to hear many of you today saying that you're making in India for the world and you're making for India. I am truly grateful as an Indian. Thank you all very much.
I want to come back to the fact that this is the 5th generation of the business. That's not easy. It's very hard, not very common in most parts of the world. What are one or two things that we could learn in that journey, in that evolution of the group?
I wish there were some 5th generation guys like your classmate over here. See, over generations, what is the single thread that has held us together was a subscription to a sound set of values. Whether it was the difficult times at any point in time my great-grandfather faced, or with succeeding generations, it was always the subscription, a common subscription to a very sound set of values. Values of integrity, values of respect, values of responsibility. And from a business perspective, or even otherwise in terms of philanthropy, values of passion, and also a value of quality in whatever you do. That is, to me, the thread that has kept our family together so far. And I think with succeeding generations, it's a question of the family will still be together in terms of this value thread. But I'm sure that the nature of business and nature of ownership, etc., will have to be transitioned and will transform to see what happens. I mean, just in line with what's happening across the world. So, and I think we need to be open enough to do it. And so many times, when I had the privilege of running the group as its chairman, I used to get members of the family, because you're friendly, they quietly come up to you every quarter or every half year. I said, what's the dividend going to be? You know, what's the dividend going to be? Because all of them would have already decided to invest in some private equity situation rather than the business. But nevertheless, I think it's what's important is this thread of values is what's kept us together. But what's, I think, more important is that we need to keep these same set of values as transitions take place over generations.
I'm going to pick up on the word transition. And you know, when we had the opportunity to meet you in the past, we've always spoken about how does the founder, the family, let go in terms of power, control, of operating decisions in a company. And I know there are parts in the group that are professionally run with, they've got CEOs outside of the family as well. And if I were to take that from there and bring it in the context of startups, where we start with 3-5 member teams and then we're growing to 100, 200 of them, what is the transition that we need to play in our minds as individuals for us to let go of control and let other people perform and build up? Is there a mental model at all? How do you do it, if I may ask?
See, Vishesh, there's always a question. Are you running a business or are you building an institution? Now, I think we have to ask ourselves this question all the time. Are we running a business or are we building an institution? Whatever institution it may be. And always the view is it doesn't apply to me, it applies to the other guy. It may be so, but the point is, are we building an institution, small or big, which will stand the test of time? And you can see institutions across businesses, you can see institutions of education, you can see institutions of certain institutions where you don't have a spiritual leader, but you still follow it because the philosophy is so strong. So once you've decided that you wish to build an institution, then we need to do what is appropriate, what is necessary to build that institution. So in the context of companies over here with founders and many of you have grown exponentially, which is absolutely phenomenal, is that further growth will come only if you want to build that institution. And if you want to build that institution, there needs to be certain strong institutional processes. And if you want strong institutional processes, these processes, you have to subject yourself to those processes. You cannot have a process for the company and a different process for you. So then you can build a business. Otherwise, if the decision space is not deployed, it will be extremely difficult for you. And then, but any case, you have some very strong biotech companies. So as your blood pressure increases or you get diabetes or whatever it is, please go to them and their business will improve. But please, I mean, you want to live a meaningful life. So unless we get towards that, but the question is, what do you want to do? And we need to answer that question, whether it's in a startup or an established business or a conglomerate like ours. 3 questions. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And more importantly, why do you do what you do? And it could change from time to time and if the context is different.
I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to turn it over to our guests to see if they have questions that they might want to ask. If we could have the folks on the mic go around, please. There's Nat's on the other side there.
Sir, good evening. Sir, my question is that there is a big dichotomy between the way the new economy businesses getting built versus the multi-generational businesses that was built by the family houses like you, right? For example, if you really see the new economy businesses, okay, once they become successful or even when they are getting successful, the entrepreneurs want to exit and then they start investing, they start doing another business, right? So then once they become successful, they want to exit and start another business, third business. We call them as quote unquote a serial entrepreneur, right? Then what also happens at a point of time, these people become like investors in various funds and businesses, etc. So with that, how do you think that this kind of multi-generational businesses will get built? That is my first question. I'll also have my second question. I'll just finish that question also before somebody comes in. What do you think is the one single reason for any of these governance issues in the new economy businesses? Because you have seen 4 or 5 generation business. So what do you think is a one single reason which the new economy businesses suffer from, because of which these issues happen?
So just a correction, sir, I've seen 3 generations. And with what I've seen today in the room, I might see 3 more, I don't know. But I'm just coming to your first question. I mean, what's wrong with serial entrepreneurship? Because they have built a business. And I don't know what you really mean by new economy and whether old economy is brick and mortar, but you need this brick and mortar to build this hotel and have this conversation here. But nevertheless, if you're looking at the new technologies that are coming and businesses being built around these new technologies, I think it's very important, but nevertheless, it is a business. So if a founder, and if they are building the business, and if they wish to exit, there's somebody else who comes in and perhaps takes that business forward in a strategic direction, or there's a strategic investor who comes and absorbs that business within their own business, and it goes on. And the founder moves on to build another business. And I think it's a brilliant thing to do, because that's what the founder wants to do. And if the founder wants to be an investor, so what are you, sir, if I might ask? You're an investor, founder?
I'm an investor.
Well, see, now you've got to catch the right guys then. So if they want to be an investor, so be it. The question is, however, what do you wish to invest in? Do you want to be a passive investor? Do you want to be an active investor? That is something that you need to talk to the founders about. So I don't see anything different. Maybe the next generation of my family may decide to exit some of the businesses that we may have developed and grown. But if I develop a strong sort of affinity, passion, or the business, then you're saying you cannot sell it, etc., then I must be willing to buy their shares and continue with that passion. So, but these things evolve over generations, because I could have never had this conversation with my late father or my grandfather, because we were expected to do something and we did it. But succeeding generations, we've got to be open enough. Because we've retired, I'm a very happy pensioner at the moment, and we need to be absolutely open. So nothing wrong with serial entrepreneurship, sir, and I hope your investments also go well. Invest in Speciale if you wish. I charge no commission, but
Anyone else who would want to ask a question?
We have a hand up here, sir.
Hello, sir. It's an honor to listen to your story. I'm 51 years old. You touched upon a subject of purpose of life. What advice, general, not money, not business, you will give yourself as a 51-year-old or somebody like me? From your experience, you could have done something differently.
Just come again. I mean, what would I give a 51-year-old? I wish I were 51, but I can tell you that much. No, but nevertheless, I think the question always, to me, there are only 3 questions. What do you want to do? How do you want to do? And why do you do what you do? So if you're having fun, are you enjoying yourself doing what you do? That's brilliant. At the same time, at 51, there may be also other commitments. And I would I would, if I were in your place, ensure that those commitments in the context of our culture, our Indian culture tells us that we should look after our parents and elders. Our culture also tells us we must have a reasonable life for the people around us, particularly spouses, children, etc., etc. And our culture also says, do support society in whatever small way you can. And so at 51, there's still a long time ahead. So as long as you're having fun what you're doing, and you're able to do this within the strength of our culture, and if that's the choice you made, I'm sure that you will have a good life and a good time. But one thing you might want to look at, if a thread of values resonates with you, I think the joy will be even greater. It's my view, personally.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
If anyone has a question, please raise your hand, otherwise I'm going to go ahead. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Sir, for a startup to get an exit by getting acquired by a corporate is always a good story. I mean, you just now said that serial entrepreneurs, how do they happen? They
Sure.
ultimately sell to a corporate. And I myself have sold, and that I've benefited from that. But in general, it is felt that the corporate culture and the startup culture are so different that it doesn't work out in most of the cases. Do you subscribe to this view, or do you do anything differently in the corporate, or what do you advise to the startups to make sure that it's not just an exit, but it has to grow even further with that in acquisition to make it work?
So I will answer the question, but may I turn it back
Sure,
on you
sure,
to a
sure,
certain extent? You decided to sell.
Yeah.
Why?
Because for example, my story, I ran a testing company. I sold that, and now I'm a VC.
Right.
So there was something else that I had in my mind to do. And so
Right.
and I'd spent good enough time. I just didn't leave after 1 year, 2 years. I just spent enough time. My team grew and in that new dispensation, all of that worked. Then I left, and I'm happy doing what I'm doing. But as a VC now, I see this. I'm now asking from VC perspective that for startups, a very good way to get an exit by selling to a corporate. But I also feel that they should, make it work later on also. It should not be just looked as an exit. And because you as a corporate must have done these kind of acquisitions,
Sure.
what is your advice on both the sides of how to make it work more often?
Sure. Look, yes, a startup environment is very different, we understand, than an established corporate environment where certain processes are very well established. Why these processes are well established is it gives us an opportunity to scale. It gives us an opportunity to scale. Because when you scale, and you scale it, because ultimately you want to provide, you want to make a good product, you want to provide a good service. Unless there is a semblance of a structure and a discipline, you cannot do it. It's not that a startup cannot do it. A startup can do it. Like you take, for instance, Infosys. It was a startup, and then they scaled, and their processes are outstanding, and we've learned from them, they've learned from us. So there's a place for everybody. You cannot expect a startup kind of environment within a corporate unless the corporate leadership basically tells the rest of the company, here it is, we have made this acquisition and we're going to leave them alone for some time. So there's clarity with the leadership, right? There's clarity with the leadership. And then, but then there also needs to be clarity as to what we are going to do eventually. Because if we are a listed company, we are also having to tell our shareholders what we are doing. And then the shareholders and the analysts and the investors, like VCs talk to you as startups, or now you're talking to other startups. We are also subject to performance levels, we are also subject to scrutiny, etc. So therefore, it's a question that comes back as, yes, startups are acquired by strategic people. We have done some acquisitions like that. Some have worked out very well, some have not worked out well, but we have learned from each one of them. It's always a question of trying to find that clarity. And sometimes we make these acquisitions in order to get fresh capability. See, in any company, whether it's a startup or an established company, to me there are three elements. There has to be capability, there needs to be efficiency, and there needs to be business growth. Within a defined geography, or a defined geography could be much larger as well. So growth, efficiency, capability. So if a startup brings that into or enhances that within an existing strategic organization, fine. So that's what it is. It's not very complicated. These are all convenient classifications. In fact, the press goes to town about writing about all these things. But we will not get that with the kind of culture of your agility. Sometimes I wish we had your agility. And when I look back, I said, what have I done in terms of policy in order to encourage that agility within the company? So that's also our responsibility.
So, sorry,
yes, sir, please.
Oh, okay.
When you go ahead, you have the mic.
Good evening, sir. Absolute privilege to hear you speak. I was lucky enough to actually interact with your organization in my past role, so I've seen those values play out firsthand. So I must say that when you speak about it here, it's refreshing to know that if we are trying to do that in the startup world and put some of those values in place, it's possible. And yes, with time and few generations, it becomes part of the DNA. My question to you is, I've shifted tracks from being an operator after 18 years to being an entrepreneur. And I think, the fire you fight today is always more important than sort of trying to, when you look at the long-term view. So every day, sort of what you work on yourself is a challenge. I just want to understand from you, as you saw these generations evolve in front of you, when did you sort of take out time to think about how do you evolve as the business, the times, the generations have evolved? And is there something that worked for you or something that didn't work for you as you evolved, both as an individual, as a business leader, maybe as a parent, a partner, across the board, right?
See, it's a very deep question, but I'll tell you what has helped me, and I hope something of that could potentially help you too, is that we are all in some form of crisis all the time, provided we think of it as a crisis. There are never any quick fix solutions. But what has helped me is two things: reflection and introspection. Personal reflection and introspection has helped me a lot. I give you a simple example, and we have our younger son, Viru. He lives in Singapore, he and his wife, and he started out as a dyslexic child, and today he runs his own business in the media. And one day I came home from work and my wife was crying. And I asked her, "Why are you crying?" She says, "Go ask your son." So I went upstairs and I saw this fellow. He was a playful fellow. And I said, "Why is mommy crying?" He said, "What do you know? You're hardly here." Now, 14-year-old child. So these are also very important moments. And that caused me to reflect and introspect a lot, saying that I needed to give him and my wife more time. So I'm sure in your startup situation, there are 101 things to do because you're just that small group of people. But that's a choice you made. That's a choice of entrepreneurship that you made. So therefore, you will have to take the rough and tumble of it along with it, because in life, the choice is always yours. Don't tell me this, I didn't have a choice, because to tell me I didn't have a choice is still yours. So the choice is always yours. So hope that helps. Sir, you had a question.
If you could give...
I've got the mic. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to listen to you, sir. You probably recall me from several years ago.
Of course.
In fact, I'll reiterate the question that Nat's asked, which I think you probably didn't get to, was we have all of these issues that are buffeting new age economies, scandals, allegations, etc. From the perspective of where you sit, from your thing, why do you think that's happening, and what would you say are, the reasons or the basis for some of those issues? What lies at the core of the troubles in some of these new companies?
So just if you could elaborate on it, you were talking about scandals, allegations,
right.
etc.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to name them, please.
No, I won't.
Yeah.
But from where you sit, from the company, on the basis of the values that you've built over many generations, why do you think what is happening? Why is it that?
So the thing is, it goes back to a certain philosophy with which, even if you're a startup or if it's a new age company or old age company, it doesn't matter. It's a living entity. It's a living entity. So the philosophy of the organization is what percolates right through, sir. In Sanskrit, there is a saying, Yatha Raja Tatha Praja. As is the king, so will be his subjects. So, if there is any scandals or allegations, or unless some competitor is trying to outsmart the other fellow, I'm leaving that aside. There is some thread would have snapped somewhere. It could be a thread of, it could be a human resources issue, it could be a certain decision hierarchy issue, whatever. Or it could be a situation where there's a preferred contractual issue, whether privately or with government. I really don't know what these things could be. That's bound to happen. If you are dealing with people who are in the public eye, be it the government, state, center, whatever, and suppose very big contracts are awarded to you, yeah, so what? The question is, if there are questions as to how these things are awarded to you in preference to somebody else, tell people, come and see what I do. Once there is good governance, it absolutely doesn't matter what really you do. And any scoop or scandal and things like that, you have to stand up to it, because the world is like that. The world is like that. So, if we have strong, sound values, and that is reflected in the governance of your business, be it startup, or be it an established business, or be it a listed company, you can't have regulations for a listed company vis-a-vis private company. I think it all has to be the same. It is you need good governance regardless of your size or your structure, and then you will see that you don't have to be afraid of anything. Scandals, allegations, etc. Yes, it will be there, but as long as you can hold your head high and stand up to it, don't worry. It hurts, but don't worry. Sir.
So my name is Subbu, and this is my second venture. I managed to exit the first one to my investors, came out clean. And I saw that 15 years ago and now the investors' approach to founders has changed. Vishesh is testament to what was there in the beginning, and now, because he was involved with the first fund which invested in me, and now he's an investor.
Fantastic, yeah.
what's your advice to investors? Because we see many investors here in dealing with founders of today. Because we are facing very different pressures than it was 15 years ago, I myself. So how would you advise investors to approach in this fast changing situation where investors are under pressure to exit? He has a fund life, everybody has a fund life. So what's your advice to investors?
So two things that I see, sir, is that one from your side and one from the investor side, is that it's good to have a dialogue to understand each other's perspective. It's good to have a dialogue. If the kind of things that, some outstanding stuff that you presented earlier today, if that requires a passive investment for some time, it's better to get a set of investors who support and understand and support your strategy. Because it doesn't become only your strategy, it becomes the strategy of the investor as well. Because the investor wants you to progress well. All right? Now, you have a situation where if that investment horizon of the investor, because they have LPs and all that, if that investment horizon is limited, then the choice is yours also whether you want to take that investment or not. But you might be in a situation where you would like to take that investment. That's where I believe a combination of the investor and the entrepreneur to have a good set of advisors like a board of directors who are active and who are well-meaning and who have different capabilities which are important to your business, that is to me very critical. It's just like a board of directors. I have the privilege of chairing a company within the group and outside the group. And if I might give you an example, we have a board with one of the companies, or rather both of them, have a very international footprint. Both have grown by acquisition and organically. There has been cross-border work. So one of the people that we have on our board is a fairly seasoned cross-border M&A lawyer. Another person is a good banker. So you need to create, you don't have to have them as board of directors, but you perhaps need to have them as a sounding board whom you will respect, rather than say he's on my advisory board. Whom you will respect, have regular conversations with them, and the subsequent conversation have the discipline to go back to them and said, this is what we discussed the last time, this is what I've done, here I need some more assistance, here I'm very happy that I took your guidance. That will really have to be the way, sir. Or you have to get in, an investor who is very passive, or you need to put in more of your own money if it has, if you have to stick around for a longer time. But the value of dialogue prior to investment on both parties is extremely important.
Vish, I know Karthik and Yali had a question. Maybe if you want to take the mic then.
Sure, we have someone here.
So one of the inevitabilities of working in or investing in a startup is all the ups and downs, the rapid ups and downs, right? And I'm sure in a business spanning 4 generations, you would have seen your share of ups and downs in a business. So what advice would you give startups and investors on how to handle those?
Look, I don't think it's any difference between a startup and, well, of course, the structure, etc., etc. There are ups and downs. There are ups and downs in any business. These could be financially related. These could be issues of delayed product development, introduction, whatever, etc. When there are ups and downs, you will need to address it squarely address it transparently. Address it squarely, address it transparently. Sometimes it hurts because sometimes you might be a major shareholder in that business. But if the group decides that we have to jettison the business, so be it. And that's the discipline you have to have. So that kind of discipline and clarity, it evolves. Sometimes it evolves with age as well and experience. But in a situation of a startup, when you have ups and downs, is there clarity of what is the up and what is the down? And then accordingly, we need to address it. And that's where dialogues with your investors, dialogues with your advisors will help. But one thing I can tell you, if you have conviction about what you're doing, but it still means additional funding, etc., you've got to show that conviction to your investors and get it. But they may give it to you with conditions. But if those conditions are not met, you must have the humility to say thus far and no further. Otherwise, it will be extremely stressful on you. This is my view personally. Because I've had situations where I have run businesses where we had to sell purely because the strategic direction of the business, the group was going differently. I've had businesses where I have failed. And I felt bad when we had to sell because many people went along with the business. But at the same time, in the larger context of the shareholders, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, maybe we take one more question and
This is Shri. Sir, I'm from Hyderabad. First of all, thanks for inviting me. An amazing conference. I feel even less achieved from what I've done in my life after seeing all these entrepreneurs. I'm a serial entrepreneur, sold 2 companies, and every day I wake up after sold companies, I feel like a loser, and I want to do something as an entrepreneur, so I'm starting a fund, sir. But the question to you is not a business question, personal question. You have ran 4 generations, although you have seen 3 or you'll see more. For us, for me personally, how do I keep my kids aspiring to do the same things I've done? Because that has to be the case if you have to run businesses in generations. And I feel that they don't have the same hunger, which I do, and I feel sometimes disappointed. Sometimes I feel like that's, like you said, reflect on your own and say, okay, fine, I have to live with it. Although my kids are doing fine, but according to me, I'm not doing fine even now. I still think I can do more. So that's how I am. So how do you manage that, if you can help understand?
See, it depends. If your children, they may want to be in the business, they may not want to be in the business. As long as children are responsible shareholders, I think you should be happy. You should be happy. Our older son, Muthu, is in the business. Vishesh, his friend, is in the business. Our younger son, Viru, is not in the business. So he's not in the business. He's got a business of his own. But he's a responsible shareholder. He says, I will follow the norms of being a responsible shareholder. So even in your business, while you may have aspirations for your children, I think happiness sometimes is an important aspiration. So if the children will be happy by doing what they have to, but yet you have given them this business and they are responsible shareholders and you have the best people to run the business, why not? They benefit from the business, they benefit from what passion they wish to follow. So they are happy, hopefully you're also happy.
So, thank you very much for spending the day with us, and most importantly, having this chat with all of us. Very insightful, a lot of learnings to take back. Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Okay, so just to leave you with this, thank you, Vishesh. Thank you very much for this honor. I'm very, very grateful to all of you for your patience. To all of you, you've done India proud. You will continue to do India proud. just stay with two things, the courage of your conviction and the content of your character. Thank you very much.